Hello and welcome back to another episode of Word Wednesday. I'm your host, Paige Goodger, and as always, we have Bix Weir from Rotorua. How's it going, Bix?
It's going great, Paige. It's good to see they haven't deleted the word Wednesday yet.
I know, and they haven't deleted Rotorua.
Yet.
So today we are going to be talking about the Comex, which Bix talks about in literally every single video he has every single day. So formerly known as the Commodity Exchange Incorporated, Comex merged with the New York Mercantile Exchange in 1994 and became the division responsible for metals trading. Comex, or the Commodity Exchange, Exchange, is a division of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is the CME group, which we see those every single day on Rotorua also. It's the world's largest futures and options trading for metals. So futures and options are part of the derivative market. So Bix, can you give us a quick, brief summary of what futures, options, and derivatives are?
Well, sure. A brief summary, no problem. A derivative is a financial instrument that's derived from something else. So, for example, the Comex derivatives on the Comex, they trade futures and options. Futures is a promise at some point in the future you're going to buy something, a commodity in this instance. An option is you have the option to buy something and you pay a certain amount to hold that option or hold that future for a certain amount of time. So it's not really, the silver, for example, you're not really buying silver. You're buying an option to buy silver, or you're buying a silver contract on a certain date that you're going to have to pay for, type of thing. That's what derivatives are. They're basically a side bet based on an actual asset at some point, hopefully.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. So first, I'm going to talk about how people may see the Comex or how they portray themselves to be, and then we will go into the truth. So people may see the Comex as risk management for futures and options, trading futures and options, helping traders, capturing opportunities. This was actually in the video I watched from the Comex website. It said act, grow, innovate, lead, invest. And then it said helping the world advance. And I couldn't help but laugh at that video because absolutely none of that is true. So Bix, tell us the truth about the Comex. What is it and what is its actual function and purpose?
Well, the truth is, most people who know the Comex actually call it the Crimex because it is literally where most of the crimes and commodities happen. Crimes meaning market manipulation. JP Morgan just got busted 800 or $982 billion for rigging precious metals on the Comex. That is a self-regulating entity, meaning that they regulate themselves and they have an overseeing body, the CFTC, which is supposed to regulate them also, but nobody regulates it. In truth and actuality, for silver market, it's difficult because there's no other market in the world for silver. It's the only exchange in the world, which is kind of crazy to think about since there's all these other countries. But silver is so important that only the United States of America can determine the price of silver on this futures and options manipulated exchange. It's crazy even to think about, but that's all there is. So yeah, they use the Comex to rig the prices of gold and silver every single day to keep them under control so we can run an unbacked fiat monetary system. We live in a world where we live with a debt-based currency that is based on faith and confidence. And faith and confidence when you're looking at monetary assets, gold and silver have been historically the number one and number two monetary assets in the world. Some say gold is the number one monetary asset. I'd say silver is the number one monetary asset. Silver has been used by far many more countries and for far longer than gold has been used as money. But the faith and confidence in unbacked fiat money, where governments get to decide how much they print, and we see that every day going on, and we're in hyperinflation, just nobody knows it quite yet. That is shaken by the rise in gold and silver prices, because people, financial types, will see the rise in gold and silver and say, "Oh my God, the U.S. dollar, which it is being priced in, the U.S. dollar is losing value because look at gold and silver. Everybody's running to the alternatives to fiat money." Now, on the flip side, if they can rig the price lower, which they have been for decades, people can say, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with the dollar. Look at gold. Look at silver. They're not going anywhere. There's nothing wrong with the U.S. dollar. It's the best currency out there because gold and silver don't go up." So that's the basis behind why they try to keep the uh, price of gold and silver under control, to maintain the false confidence in fiat money, especially the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, that faith. They need that faith for people. And if people are allowed to be smart and think for themselves and have an open market,
Can't have any of that.
you might
No,
lose
whatever.
faith in the dollar. Oh no.
Well, I know, and you look at the amount of dollars they're printing. I mean, what was the cure for the economic problems all last year during COVID? Print more money. What is the cure for every problem? The 2008 market crash, print more money. What is the cure for everything in fiat money world? There's only one answer: print more money. And at the end of the day, you look at how many dollars they're printing. There's the dollars they tell us about, which I think our debt is 25, 26 trillion now. And then the dollars they don't tell us about, which is in the quadrillions behind the scenes. They don't tell anybody about it, because that would be even worse. If people really understood how much money that our government and the Fed is printing behind the scenes, they would lose their minds and lose the faith and confidence in this system that I have no idea why people still believe in the US dollar, other than they got the media behind them. They got, gold and silver prices suppressed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We're living in a bizarro world on so many fronts, but the number one thing right now is the value of fiat money. Is it going to last? I don't think so. And that's really scary, the ramifications of fiat money ending. Once again, it's failed 3,000 times in history, and this is going to be the biggest one ever, because we're on a global fiat money faith system right now, and that's really scary.
So I know the Comex doesn't trade gold and silver specifically. They're just an intermediary between people who want to be in the papers market, right?
Kind of. What the Comex trades is futures and options contracts. So it's
Okay.
basically they're trading IOUs back and forth, but there is a physical delivery mechanism on the Comex. Every few months, they'll have a delivery month, and those people who are holding contracts can cash them in for the real thing. And
Okay.
and so that's kind of the way they say they hold everybody, within reason, is the delivery component. But when you look at the volumes traded, for example, in silver, there's over 500 million ounces of silver traded about every day. It averages 400 to 500 million ounces of silver every day. But you look at how much silver is mined in the world every year, there's only 800 million. It's going to be less this year or last year because of COVID. But it's like, okay, you have the entire world digging silver out of the ground, massive amounts of capital and people that are trying to get this extremely rare and useful metal. And yet on the Comex, they can trade that, and every day they trade that amount, or every 2 days. It's insane what these people are allowed to get away with. And
Is that because it's like the future of like the future silver that's going to come out of the ground? Like,
but
is that
it's supposed to see, that's an excellent point, because that's what it was supposed to be.
okay?
The mining companies were supposed to hedge their position, meaning, they got to borrow money, and they don't want the volatility in price, so they would sell futures contracts for a time when they think they were going to get that silver out of the ground, and then they'd have this physical silver, so it was a wash.
Mhm.
Now no mining companies hedge their production, none. So it's like, why do we even have a futures market? There are certain reasons to have it, for if you have big silver inventories, like silver dealers will have big inventories, but not this big, not this insane amounts. Like jewelry producers might have big inventories, mints might have big inventories. As a matter of fact, the US Mint is the largest short position, theoretically, largest legitimate short when they have silver in their coffers. Um, and that's run out of the banks too. So it's this big, ugly, dark machine that's
Mhm.
been running in the background of silver to control and manipulate prices, and gold, but mainly silver. And that's why silver right now is trading at 50% of its all-time high in 1980. Imagine how much money has been printed since 1980 until today. Massive quadrillions. I mean, you can't even put your head around it around the world. And yet silver is half the value it was in 1980. Gold's almost 3 times what it was in 1980. Silver is the key.
I mean,
Silver is the big
everything
killer.
is 4 times what it was in the 80s, you
Oh,
know?
even yeah.
Gas, a cup of coffee, your clothes, your shoes, going to the movies, a soda, like everything across the board has skyrocketed. I'm actually putting together a whole chart of all of this so people can see how the price has moved for every other commodity since the 80s and then versus how that's moved for silver. Because I think once people see that visual, it's like, well, how has everything else gone up? And silver is used in all of our technologies.
Mhm.
So clearly there's a market for it. Where where does that add up?
Yeah, it adds up to be market manipulation on the Comex, the only exchange in the world there is for silver.
So what about their inventory? Has there ever been an audit of the CME group or the Comex?
Um, I don't believe there's any official audits. Now, you have certain entities that are authorized to be warehouse holders. JP Morgan is the largest silver holder in the Comex warehouses. They also just happen to be, by the way, the only silver inventory holder for the SLV, which is the silver ETF, which is another criminal exchange run by BlackRock. So JP Morgan has about 49.9% of all this. They don't want to hit 50% of all the silver on the Comex warehouse is in their vaults. No, it's not audited. We don't know if those bars are real. We don't know if they're just paper positions saying, hey, look, it says here on my spreadsheet that I have silver. There you go. I have silver. There is no, at least no public audit. Now the CFTC is supposed to go in there and check it. They need to drill every bar, if you ask me. These are 1,000-ounce bars. Who knows what's in those bars? If you trust JP Morgan, you crazy. They just fined JP Morgan $982 million for rigging the silver market, and yet they allow them to be the biggest holder of inventories. It only makes sense if you understand that they are running cover for the manipulation of silver. And this is 100% assisted by the US government, the current administration, the Trump administration, the Obama administration, all the administrations before them, going all the way back to probably the early 1970s when this version of the Comex came into existence. So this is not like a new thing. This has been going on for probably since the invention of fiat money, this invention, which was back in 1913, the invention of the Federal Reserve System. It is the biggest problem we have in the United States. It is our biggest weakness around the world. Everybody knows the US dollar is a fraud because we have to rig the markets, and it's going to be our downfall, or it's going to be something that we can use to change the world. And I'm hoping we change the world with it. If done correctly, we can go back to some sort of gold, maybe even silver monetary system and fix a lot of these problems. But that's the thing. It's going to take decisions to be made, and it's going to take the collapse of the old system. And that's what scares a lot of people.
Yeah, so if let's say the whole system collapses and the markets aren't rigged anymore, would there even be a market?
No.
How would you actually know the price of silver? When my friends asked me this the other day, she said, "Well, if everything's supposed to go to zero, then where do you put your money? Like, where is it safe? Even if you're holding it in your own possession, how will everyone else know the value
Right.
of the silver that you hold?"
Well, there's a few things to unpack there, as our friend Jean Claude says. The first thing, no one would have money. So you wouldn't be able to put anywhere because your bank would have gone under and there would be no money. But let's just say we start up again, and how do we
Well,
get?
I guess I'm specifically saying, uh, like right in this moment right now, if people wanted to save their money before the crash, where would they put that if everything is supposed to go to zero? And then once everything goes to zero, we don't really know the true value of the assets that, people still have in their own possession.
Right. And that's that will be something we have to reinvent exchanges. Actually, we have to not reinvent exchanges, go back to the old way that exchanges worked, where if you had a commodity, you went into a marketplace and you said, "Hey, I have 100 ounces of silver here." And another person would say, "I have $100 and I want to pay you $1 an ounce. Here you go." That would be a proper exchange. That is not done anymore, nowhere on planet Earth. So it would start probably in your local with your local coin dealers, just like it did in the old days. When fiat money started, it was the gold merchants that were holding gold receipts, and they would like hand out receipts that they said, "Hey, I'll have the gold here." There weren't a lot of vaults around back in those days. "I have all the gold here. You guys can trade these receipts." And then the gold merchants start giving out too many receipts. That's kind of the beginnings of paper money. But it will have to revert back to that. As a matter of fact, in the Road to Ruta documents, that's something that Ruta is in one of the documents called Banking Basics. It shows a little girl going up to a teller with 19 gold coins, trading them in for dollars. That is probably our future. It might seem like it's, a couple hundred years back, but our future, because all the faith and confidence is going to be lost, people aren't going to believe pieces of paper. People aren't going to believe electronic blips. They're going to believe the real thing. Prove it to me. So you're going to have to be able to go into your bank, cash in your money, which they say is backed by gold or silver, and get the gold and silver back into your own hands. Cryptos, the good cryptos, they will work as well. It's backed by mathematics. As long as 2 + 2 = 4, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined, and you can see everything on the blockchain. With gold and silver, there's no blockchain, but they have the real metal, the physical metal that you can hold in your hands. So I think the biggest thing to think about going forward after this old crazy system we live in collapses, who do we have to trust to decide the value of our money? It's got to be us. We're the ones who are going to have to say, okay, no more banking chicanery, no more banking manipulation. We will only trust what we know and what we understand. We will know and understand gold, physical gold and physical silver. We will know and understand cryptocurrencies that are immutable blockchain, open source software. We can check the blockchain to see exactly where certain assets lie. It's going to come down to trust. This faith and confidence game that we're about to pass through the destruction of, that's going to be the key. But the sad thing is all the other silver dealers around the world, where you go down to your local silver dealer, he's going to price silver according to what the Comex contracts say. And it's just crazy to think that the entirety of the silver complex, all the miners and you think of all the employees working for the mining companies who have been destroyed over the years and lost their jobs because the price of silver wasn't high enough to economically pull silver out of the ground, and destroyed the families and destroyed towns. I mean, these bankers have no regard for human pain, and they're completely evil. They have destroyed countries. They need to be put aside. They need to be taken down. JP Morgan is the king right now. I'd say BlackRock is another one. A company called Virtu Financial is another one that just trades electronic contracts like they're going out of style. They went, I think it was 8 years without a single day of losing a trade, which is like mathematically impossible unless you're cheating. And they were absolutely cheating. The guy running that is called a guy named Vincent Viola, Vinny Viola. And if you talk about mafia, there you go. There's your banking mafia.
So the Comex is just protecting the bank's fraudulent activity as normal.
It's protecting the bank's fraudulent activity, but number one, they get away with it because they assist the U.S. government in protecting the sanctity of that dollar that government loves to print everything to get us out of problems. So it's all works together, this big ugly machine that grinds and grinds and grinds. And who are the losers? The people. Always the people are the losers.
How does manipulating the price of silver directly impact people like you and me?
The biggest thing for me is the dishonesty in the capital markets in the United States of America and the US dollar, which everybody is glommed onto around the world. It's the world's reserve currency. That's what's really going to be the downfall of this whole game, is the death and destruction it's going to cost when it all falls apart, because it was, our entire system is built on a fraud. And that's why we're so shaky right now. And we require everybody to buy oil in US dollars. And we're like, oh my God, you're going to use Chinese yuan to buy oil. We're going to bomb you. That's been the mantra of the United States for the past, since 1971. So yeah, it sucks. I mean, cheating, manipulating, lying is not the American way. And if we ever want to return to a strong America, which I think if you live in America, most of you do, and actually most of the world wants us to stand up and kick these bastards out. That's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to get rid of the fraud and the cheating and the lying and the stealing.
So I think we're going to wrap up there. Is there anything else that you want people to know about the Comex or market manipulation that they're involved in?
I would just tell everybody out there, not just Americans, but everybody around the world, get yourself some physical silver in your own possession, because this game is ending soon and you're going to want to have that. It represents the truth and honesty that's going to come back into our lives. And silver is the bank killer. Just remember that. If you want to do your part, go buy some physical silver.
Yes. So just to recap, the Commodities Exchange Inc., the COMEX, is owned and operated by the CME Group, has come to control and manipulate the price of gold and silver as well as copper for the sole benefit of certain exchange insiders, most prominently JP Morgan. Through corrupt trade practices, the COMEX has stolen and captured the pricing mechanisms for gold, silver, and copper away from the influence of actual supply and demand fundamentals. Replacing the law of supply and demand as the price determinant, the COMEX has substituted a private club run by a few large traders who, in turn, dictate prices to metal producers, consumers, and investors. The Federal Commodities Regulator, the CFTC, is compliant in the price capturing, but the prime culprit is the CME Group. Ironically, it is data from the CME and published by the CFTC that prove price manipulation on the COMEX. So what I just read to you is actually from a document titled Why the COMEX is Corrupt. And if you want to read that entire document, it is linked in the link tree on our Instagram page. So go check that out if you're interested. So that is where we're going to end today with the COMEX. I hope you guys learned something and now know why the COMEX is so corrupt. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and I can't wait to see you next week. Take care until then.